Yeah.
Are we all good? We're all happy with that? We can all work. Yeah. Good. Good evening, members and all those present. Before we begin, I need to go over the housekeeping rules. There are no fire drills planned for this evening, so if the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building by the nearest exit and assemble in the Queen's Gardens in front of the building. Please do not re-enter the building until you are advised to do so. Please also ensure your mobile phones have been switched off or set to silent. I welcome those joining us in the public gallery and would ask they follow any guidance and instructions given by anyone seated at the top table. This meeting is being recorded. The recording will be available on the Borough Council's website. Please would all members in the room use their microphones whenever they speak, as without them, anyone watching online will not be able to hear you. Thank you. We will now commence with the business for this evening. Agenda item 1 is the apologies. I have 3 apologies in front of me, one from Councillor Dave Jones, Councillor Jonathan Downs, and Councillor Chris Bailey. Are there any more? No. So next on the agenda is the declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest from any members or officers in relation to any of the business contained within this agenda? No. All right. So next up, we have the minutes of the previous meetings. I don't have one there. Is everybody happy with the previous minutes? Yep. Okay. So we move on to agenda item 4, which is the application for the major development at Western Mears Farm, Mare. No speakers for that one. Okay, we'll have a presentation now from the officer.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just check members can see the screen? Has it come up? Okay, good. So this is an application for full planning permission for the construction of 2 agricultural buildings to support cattle rearing alongside associated silage, clamps and silos. The application site is located in the open countryside, adjacent to an existing farm holding. So on the screen now is the proposed site plan for the development. The proposed buildings are located to the rear of an existing conurbation of buildings on the site. Both of these buildings would be utilised to rear cattle. To the rear of those buildings, as proposed, is the location of the silage clamp. The development would be accessed from an existing access point off the adjacent highway. And these are the proposed elevations. So both buildings are identical in their scale, footprint and design. So the elevation at the top here would be the front elevation of the building that you would see at the forefront of the application site. During the application, officers secured amendments to the design of the scheme. So the element highlighted in peach would be constructed from more traditional brickwork. The rest of the scheme would be in more functional agricultural buildings, so your concrete pads and so on. The reason for this change was because, as you'll see in some of the photos, the barns and the main farmhouse were actually very attractive in their design, and given the siting and projection of the building, this particular element that's highlighted in peach would be very visible from the highway. So therefore, that's why we've given the design a little bit more due care and attention. The rear of the building, much more functional and traditional in terms of its appearance. So the detailing on the side elevations was again a change during the application. So they've got some arched entrance detailing, brickwork, porthole windows, again to appear more in keeping with the existing buildings on site. And here we've just got the floor plans of the building, just showing the layout of the barns, both of which, as I've said, will be utilised for cattle rearing. So these images are taken at the bottom end of the access track into the site. So just where my cursor is hovering now is where the new buildings would be situated. So you've got existing buildings that would be retained, and then the new buildings would be here. So they would extend out beyond the side elevation of the existing structure there, and that would be the element that would have the brickwork detailing. The image on the left is a point of access, so the site already benefits from quite a substantial agricultural access, surfaced, suitable for larger agricultural vehicles and 2 vehicles to pass. And then here on the right-hand side of the screen, you can just see some of the lovely detailing that's on the existing barns that are on site. So the development would carry through that material palette and form into the new development. And these 2 pictures here are just of the land directly rear of the buildings. So this is where the buildings would be constructed. At the moment, it's agricultural land. Previously, it has been host to buildings in the past. The farmstead was used for intensive pig rearing. So you can see on these sort of aerial images here that there used to be quite a substantial development there to support the enterprise on the farm at the time. So officers consider that the principle of the application is supported. It represents appropriate development within the countryside that would support an established agricultural enterprise. Officers are satisfied that with the amendments achieved, the application would maintain an attractive character within this existing cluster of buildings and not appear out of place within the wider landscape. There are no objections from the Highway Authority or Environmental Health Department on the proposals as submitted, subject to the conditions as outlined within the report. Members will note from the supplementary report that the recommendation to permit is subject to officers receiving further information to satisfy consultees from the Staff's Wildlife Trust and Nature Space in respect of biodiversity net gain. We're satisfied that the broad principles of the development are acceptable and that a suitable scheme can be achieved to satisfy the requirements of both biodiversity net gain and ecology. But further information is required to address some of those technical considerations. And officers are satisfied that given the level of information provided to date and the type of application, that a decision can be made on the proposal today, subject to officers continuing to liaise with the relevant consultees and the applicant. On that basis, the scheme is recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As we've got no speakers on this, I'll now put it to the committee. Does anybody have any comments on it? Councillor Fear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'm happy to move this item as recommended. We need to encourage the agricultural sector. I think this has come to, as I remember, SPCG before now. So thinking about the way this looks, and I'm very pleased to see the way that we've got the front end of this blending in with everything else, so that it'll look right in the day. I can't see any reason, certainly no planning reason why we should reject this. I think it's going to help a business which needs to be fostered. We need to foster agricultural business. It'll look right in its place. As we've seen from the officer, we've had stuff there before, and frankly, let's be honest, that stuff that was there before doesn't look anything like as nice as what we've got now. So we've got a planning gain in that respect. So I'm happy to move this as recommended.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fear. Are there any more comments? Would anybody care to second the motion? Councillor
Kasparovich, yeah, second motion and agree with Councillor Fear that we need to be supporting agriculture going forward. So I'm happy to second the motion.
Okay, shall we put it to a vote then? So all in favour of accepting the planning permission? That's, yeah. Great stuff, that's unanimous. So we shall move on to item 5 of the agenda. Okay, so item 5 is the application for a major development of Newcastle-under-Lyme College on Nutton Lane. I'll hand over now to the officer to give us a rundown of that one.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an application for an extension to Newcastle-under-Lyme College off Nutton Lane. The application site as existing. You've got the main sort of 3 wings of the college here, the existing car park and the access points off Nutton Lane. The proposed extension will come off the northern elevation of the building into an area, currently a mixture of landscaping and a small area of playing pitch. So on this site plan, you can see the hatched area in black, which is the footprint of the proposed extension. It'll sit adjacent to the existing sports pits provision shared between the college and other education providers, as well as to the public from the Gordon Bank Sports Centre. The footprint of the extension would see the removal of 6 trees, as well as a slight encroachment into the playing pitch area. As a result, the playing pitch areas will also be reorganised. The orange hatched area is a drainage easement, so you'll see that the built development has avoided encroachment into that area. It'll add a 4th wing to the building, which would host a series of teaching, administration and social spaces for pupils and staff across 4 storeys. So on the screen now, you'll just see a series of the floor plans for each respective floor. So on the screen now, you've got the ground floor of the extension, which would host mainly social space and staffing facilities, as well as a seminar room. Moving on to the first floor here, obviously you can see it's dominated by seminar and teaching space. Again, similar onto the second floor with enhanced staff provision. And finally, further seminar rooms on the final floor. The proposal is designed to appear as a natural extension of the main building, identical in its height, form and appearance, excuse me. Which can be seen on the visual plan that's on the screen at the moment. The materials palette across the extension would also match. So they'll be utilising black terracotta cladding, grey and white render and grey fenestration. So you'd see a seamless transition there between existing and new. So the elevation drawing on the top of the screen is the end elevation of the building, as if you were looking at the structure from the playing fields. And then the elevation below is the front elevation of the extension, which you can see demonstrates that its form and appearance will match that of the existing building. And then on the top of the screen here, you've got the rear elevation of the building, again, demonstrating that the design principles will follow through from that of the main structure. And the elevation below is a cross section through. So you'll see the corridor connecting the existing to the new development. Excuse me. The photo on the screen now shows the current end of the building. And then you've got the playing fields beyond to the right-hand side of the picture. So it's within this space here that the extension would project into. So you'd see the removal of the trees here and the realignment of the boundary fencing to accommodate the proposed development. This is the same elevation. We're looking at the end of the building, taken from slightly further back into the playing fields. So again, this elevation of the building would largely be mirrored in the new development. And there, slightly further back again into the playing pitch. This photo is taken from one of the nearest car parks. So this is the existing end of the building. So you would see a continuation of the ridge line out into the new extension here. And again, a photo from the same view showing all three of the existing wings of the building, and you'd see the final element added at the end here. The principle of the development is considered acceptable by officers. It's in a sustainable location and would assist in supporting the continued delivery of further education to residents of the borough. The applicants have demonstrated that it would serve an increased demand expected in terms of pupil numbers that are predicted to attend the college in future years, and development to facilitate such expansion is supported in policy terms. There are no objections from any statutory consultees, including the lead local flood authority, County Highways and Sports England, subject to the conditions as outlined within the main report. Biodiversity net gain will be delivered off-site through the purchasing of units at an established habitat bank at Keele Meadows, and therefore the development would meet its statutory requirements with regards to BNG provision. Whilst the development would result in encroachment into the existing playing pitch, the realignment of the pitches, together with the college's commitment to appropriately manage and maintain those pitches, has led to no objections from Sports England. There would be 6 trees lost adjacent to the development site, but a landscaping scheme is proposing the planting of a further 16 trees, so there would be a net increase in terms of provision. Therefore, in light of the above, officers recommend the scheme is approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I do believe we have a speaker to come forward for this one. I'll apologise if I get this wrong. It's Debbie Torgerson. You will have 5 minutes to speak. Once the 5 minutes have passed, well, once 4 minutes have passed,
yep,
the clerk will give you a signal that's 1 minute remaining.
Okay, lovely, thank you. Hello, my name is Debbie Torgerson and I'm the applicant on this application. Newcastle and Stafford Colleges Group provides a diverse range of academic courses and vocational training programmes, giving thousands of learners the opportunity to gain relevant qualifications and practical experience. The college group has also experienced significant growth over the past decade and now has over 12,000 students across full-time, part-time and apprenticeship provision across its 3 campuses. Specifically, at its Newcastle site, there are currently 4,000 full-time students enrolled and approximately 650 staff. An additional 400 students enrolled in the 25-26 academic year, and it is anticipated that this growth will continue. As a result of its growth, NSCG are proposing an extension to its existing Newcastle campus. The development incorporates significant new teaching space and ancillary facilities. The extension will enable NSCG to meet the demand of increasing student numbers in order to maintain provision of and access to high-quality post-16 education. The new facilities will support a broad range of vocational and academic courses, ensuring that students have access to resources that will create pathways into future careers. The extension also aims to improve the overall functionality of the campus, enabling the existing site to operate more efficiently. Overall, the development will allow NSCG to strengthen its role as a key educational provider in Newcastle-under-Lyme. The Newcastle campus is already operating at 116% capacity, which is forecast to rise to 125% within the next few years, demonstrating a clear and urgent need for additional space. Due to current space constraints, the college has already had to turn away many students in consecutive years at the Newcastle campus, demonstrating the real impact on local access to education. This capacity pressure is not just an operational issue. It impacts local opportunity with increasing numbers of young people unable to access educational training. The college has already maximised and reconfigured all available space and operates an exceptionally efficient estate below national space standards. This investment directly aligns with both local and national objectives to expand access to skills, training and education, and to promote sustainable development. The extension will result in significant benefits, including enhanced quality of learning, providing modern purpose-built teaching spaces, improved retention and student satisfaction, improved quality of education, creation of jobs and local investment, high quality landscaping, as well as on-site and off-site biodiversity net gain. There will be no loss of the existing sport pitches. These will be reconfigured, which will maximise the functionality of the site and improve compliance with the FA pitch guidelines, therefore generating a positive improvement for football. Furthermore, the design of the proposed extension mirrors into the existing teaching blocks in terms of form and materials by adding a fourth element to its wing. The scheme uses the same palette of materials to the campus to reinforce the synergy between the new and existing buildings. A planning assessment of the proposals has demonstrated that the principle of development is supported in accordance with the policies of the core spatial strategy, providing expanded modern higher education access for all. The proposal is also shown to be in accordance with the NPPF National Planning Policy Framework, ensuring sufficient post-16 education provision for the area. Furthermore, the social, environmental and economic benefits that this proposal will deliver should be positively considered in accordance with the presumption in favour of sustainable development. A full suite of technical assessments submitted with the application conclude that there are no technical reasons why planning permission should not be granted. Importantly, there are no objections from consultees and there have been no responses from members of the public to the application. We did consult with neighbours prior to submission, as we value the thoughts of the community and of our neighbours, to which no concerns were raised. The application has been assessed in detail by officers and we thank them for their work on the application. Their recommendation is to approve, and on this basis, we respectfully request that planning permission is granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can now return to the gallery. Thank you. So that's the one and only speaker on that one. So I shall turn it over to committee now. Do we have any comments from any of the councillors? Councillor Fear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. In many ways, I think we should probably accept this. It's a hideously ugly building, but then it's only adding to a hideously ugly building which is there. It's a great shame, but you know, there we are. What concerns me a little bit more, I think, is looking through the report. The college is very ambitious, which is fair enough, and this is a good thing. But the parking, we are 28 spaces short. Now, there is not a lot of parking around there. And what worries me is, we can talk about 350 students, 28 spaces seems a minimum in some ways in that regard. And I'd just like the officer to sort of talk us through why we're not asking for extra parking there. And because what worries me is where are these, if these cars appear, where are they going to go? That at the moment, this is a road which is clogged at key times. So I'm just a little bit concerned about that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fear. Would the officer like to respond?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so there is, as Councillor Fear pointed out, a shortfall in parking spaces. The Highway Authority have had sight of that proposal. Excuse me again, sorry. And the application is accompanied by what officers and the county council feel is quite a robust car park management scheme. So in terms of sustainable transport options, there are numerous bus stops available within close proximity to the site. So it's served by services within and beyond the borough. They've also demonstrated that there'll be quite robust enforcement in terms of parking on the site. So pupils are expected to register vehicles. They're only utilising it during operational hours, and that there is a bursary scheme as well for the use of bus passes. So we consider that there are suitable measures in there to deter car use. Parking around the site, there are traffic restrictions in terms of parking on Nutton Lane itself, so we don't consider that any overspill would result in highway safety issues on Nutton Lane. So on that basis, officers are satisfied that there wouldn't be a highway safety issue as such, and that the college could manage that car parking provision internally within the site.
Thank you. Are there any more comments from any councillors? I'd just like to add to Councillor Fear's queries about that. Personally, myself as well, I don't think there's any kind of drop-off area for students, is there, as such? I think the parking and the drop-off would possibly be something to look at within this. I don't think it's any reason to object this planning permission, but I do think that it should be brought up at some point. So, are there any more comments from any of the councillors? Nope. Okay, so on that basis then, shall we put it to a vote to pass the permission, grant the permission? All in favour? Oh, sorry, Councillor Holland.
To move it.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, so Councillor Holland was willing to put the motion in, and
Yeah,
Councillor Tiff
I'll happily second it.
will second it. Okay, so we'll have a vote on that then. All in favour of granting permission? That's unanimous again. So we shall move on to item 6 of the agenda, which is the application for other development of 25 to 27 Wells Street and 82 Garden Street. I'll pass over now to the officer who will give us a brief rundown of that one.
Thank you, Chair. Permission is sought for the change of use of an office at 25 to 27 Wells Street and 82 Garden Street to provide 2 HMOs or houses of multiple occupancy. The application is within the town centre, so it's shown there on the screen. So just off to the left of the screen is the main Newcastle town centre, Pastor de Piazza, if people know where that is, and the Catholic Church is just to the south. So in terms of the principle of the proposed use, policy HOU 7 of the emerging local plan states that the change of use from other uses to an HMO should meet a number of criteria, including a requirement that it would not result in more than 10% of residential properties within a 100-metre radius being in use as an HMO. The council's evidence indicates that 2 licensed HMOs are in operation along Wells Street, with a further one to the rear of the site on Barracks Road. While it is acknowledged that there may well be other smaller HMOs in the vicinity, no evidence is available to confirm the location of such properties, and given that they do not require planning permission, these cannot be considered. Therefore, on the basis of the available evidence, as there are less than 10% of houses used as HMOs within 100 metres of the site, then the proposal is considered to be acceptable in principle. The application site is located within a highly sustainable location and would make use of an existing building while also providing a good contribution to the council's housing supply. Debbie, could you just, thank you. So that's a photo of the properties, so to either side of that access through. And next one, please, Deb. So you can see there, edged in red, is a site plan, which shows both shows bin storage areas, one behind each of the properties, and also cycle storage as well to the rear. Next one, please, Deb. So this is to show the 2 floors of the property, the ground floor, and it's difficult to read, I know at this distance, but it shows the split of each of the 2 properties into the self-contained rooms, and then the next slide shows the first floor with more rooms within, and then we've just got a couple of photos of the street. So that's looking down Wells Street, and then that's looking along Garden Street. So concerns have been raised by residents regarding antisocial behaviour, and whilst fear of crime is a material planning consideration, antisocial behaviour and the potential for crime are not considered to be inherent traits with the type of use proposed, and no evidence has been provided to demonstrate why the proposal would generate adverse levels of noise or cause issues relating to antisocial behaviour in the area. No objections have been received from the council's environmental health team, and on that basis it's not considered that a refusal on amenity grounds could be sustained. In terms of parking, the council's current parking standards require that for an HMO use, half a parking space should be provided per bedroom, meaning that for this proposal there should be 5 off-street parking spaces for the 10 rooms proposed. Whilst the site has no off-street parking, the use of the site as an office, which is the authorised use and could be reopened again tomorrow as an office, that the parking standards for that use require 15 spaces. So it's clear, therefore, that these standards would equate to a higher parking requirement than the 5 that are needed for this proposal. Furthermore, the site is in a highly sustainable location with good access to local transport modes such as the bus station. The Highway Authority have noted that they cannot reasonably resist the application on highway grounds given the sustainable location of the site. They recommended approval subject to the imposition of conditions. So, in conclusion, your officers recommend approval subject to the conditions set out in the agenda report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do have some speakers on this one. First off, we would have Councillor Casey Hume.
Sorry, I thought I'd be following Louise. I thought Louise was going before me, so. Okay.
Do I need to run through? You'll have 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
okay.
No worries. Thank you.
Chair members, I speak today on behalf of local residents who object strongly to this proposal to convert the former CAB premises into 2 HMOs, accommodating 10 residents, and thank you for the opportunity to address the committee. Many residents who are here tonight feel increasingly concerned that the cumulative impact of HMO developments in Wells Street and Garden Street is changing the character of their streets and placing increasing pressure on long-established residential communities. Policy HOU 7, Homes and Multiple Occupation, from the emerging local plan, states that the change of use from other uses to an HMO should meet the following criteria. No more than 10% of residential properties within a 100-metre radius can be HMOs. There are 44 properties in Wells Street / Garden Street. The report states that only 2 licensed HMOs on Wells Street and one HMO on Barrack Street have been identified. However, observations by residents reveal that there will be 8 HMOs in Wells Street / Garden Street and Barracks Road, should this application be granted. The report acknowledges that these exist, but states that they cannot be considered because evidence is not available. In my view, the absence of evidence should not be treated as evidence of absence. Given residents' concerns, it is important that the committee can be satisfied that the HMO percentage has been accurately calculated before determining the application. Before a decision is made, I respectfully request that the Council undertakes a more thorough investigation of the number and location of HMOs within the relevant area. This could include reviewing council tax records, electoral roll information, licensing records, environmental health records, and any other available sources of evidence. If there are additional HMOs within the 100-metre radius, the calculation of HMO concentration is incorrect, and the proposal could fail to comply with local plan policy HOU 7. It is extremely frustrating that at this late stage, the planning officer has submitted a supplementary report in the last couple of days, conveniently changing the existing wording now from HMOs in the original report to supported living. Even so, it still does not comply. The proposal must not sandwich family homes, C3 dwellings between 2 HMOs or other non-family residential uses. There is evidence that there are family homes that are sandwiched between an HMO and other. It must also not create a continuous frontage of 3 or more HMOs or other non-family residences. Wells Street South has 5 HMOs without including 25/27. Should this application be approved, then there will be 5 HMOs, including 23 Wells Street and 80 Garden Street, creating a continuous frontage. There must be no unacceptable impact on neighbouring residents, including noise, disturbance or overlooking. Residents report that there are significant incidents of antisocial behaviour, noise behaviours, some of I've witnessed myself and I've reported. There are concerns that the officer's recommendation is flawed and does not adequately consider this cumulative impact. Existing HMOs, whether established through planning permission or permitted development rights, are part of the reality experienced by residents and should not simply be disregarded when assessing the character and amenity of the area. Parking and highway impacts are also a significant concern. This is addressed in more detail by the residents' presentation, and it is noted that the Highways Department did not visit the site before making their recommendation. Residents are also disappointed that environmental health concerns appear to have been given little weight, despite numerous reports of fly tipping, noise nuisance, antisocial behaviour associated with the existing HMOs in the area. Street scene teams have attended on several occasions to assist with clean-up operations. Particularly concerning is the consultation response from Staffordshire Police dated the 25th of March 2022, which is not fully referred to in the officer's report, but what has been reported in the Sentinel today. The police strongly recommend refusal and reported approximately 964 incidents within the locality during the previous 12 months. Their response referred to ongoing issues of antisocial behaviour and drug-related activities. The purpose of the policy is to ensure community cohesion and prevent a change of character of the area to the detriment of the local community. This detriment is clearly evidenced by the police report, and further HMOs in this area will exacerbate the problems identified in that report from the police. We therefore respectfully ask the committee to refuse this application and to give proper weight to the cumulative impact that further HMO development is having on the character of amenity and sustainability of this community. Chair and members, this application presents an opportunity for the Council to demonstrate that it takes seriously the concerns that are being prompted consideration of an Article 4 direction. If the Council believes that the concentration of HMOs is becoming harmful to communities, there must be a point at which further expansion is resisted. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Councillor Casey-Hume. Next speaker to come up would be Louise Wilson. Do we have any? We'll just see if we can get you some now. We'll just wait for Councillor Fee to come back. I think he's just gone grab a drink as well. Anytime you're ready, you can begin. You are 5 minutes. The officer will give you a shout at 4 minutes, let you know you got 1 minute left. Thank you very much.
Express our views on this planning application. We have
Hold on a second.
You can just press button on the mic.
Oh, hang on then. Let me
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to express our views on this planning application. We have pride in our town and appreciate efforts being made to improve and enhance it. Welland Garden Street are part of the town's conservation area noted for characterful Victorian buildings. Residents of Welland Garden Street are all opposed to the current proposals for these premises. We hope the council will hear our concerns and support our wishes in an effort to prevent any further loss of our borough's truly affordable homes to HMOs, numbers of which have rapidly increased in our streets in 2020. Wells Street, by our definition, is now comprised of over 50% HMOs. Just taking into account those that fall within the permitted development, this will be over 10% by our calculations with this HMO. We suggest planning check the maths with us. Note also that 23 Wells Street is a Lyme Street Trust HMO, and number 82 Garden Street is a student HMO. So this will mean the whole corner of this conservation area will be HMO properties. We are now sandwiched and surrounded by HMOs. The initial application notice for the former CAB premises was for 2 residences, which we would not have objected to. However, we discovered that the intention was actually to create a 7-bed HMO across the 2 properties. Oddly, the developer then increased this to an application for a 10-bed HMO, using the originally designated communal areas as bedrooms, which seems contrary to the developer's claim of creating attractive accommodation for NHS and professional staff. In our opinion, this is more likely to result in poor quality housing provision with little to no recreational space and inadequate facilities for waste disposal for as many as 7 to 10 people. If the developer's current business model fails, what type of tenants would they then wish to attract? Parking is also likely to be an issue. Highways do not appear to have done a site visit before making their recommendation to committee. They have not taken into account that our 2 streets are also used and have businesses, including 2 nurseries, a creche, a healing centre, a Jehovah's Witnesses church, dance studio, 2 hairdressers, a restaurant, small bar due to open, a large high school and a primary school and a block of flats, 5 new builds to come, and last but not least, the car park Highways took into account has been sold by the council and is likely to be another large building application. The developer states tenants won't need cars. People will always want cars. This HMO and others in our 2 streets bear testament to that. If, as the applicant states, their tenants will be professional people, they're more likely to want cars and parking. Please note this proposed HMO backs on and falls within 100 metres of another large student HMO on Barracks Road, which is directly opposite the bus station and town centre and on cycle routes, but they still have 5 cars, which are driving up and down the alleyway under the applicant's property at all hours of the day and night. There are 44 houses in Garden Street and Wells Street with only 28 spaces over both streets. These are already oversubscribed and naturally people want to park near their houses. In relation to antisocial behaviour, we implore you to appreciate the negative impacts of a transient population on the amenity and cohesion of a long-term but no smaller established local community. In recent years, there's been a decline in our area with so many houses in our streets being converted to Lyme Trust and probation-supported HMOs, which has had serious implications for neighbouring residents. With the current HMO level, we as residents, some of whom are elderly and infirm, have suffered from noise and disturbance at all hours of the day and night, fly tipping, overflowing waste bins, bin dipping by individuals, vermin infestation, unauthorised use of the residents' parking areas. We have evidence of these problems in photos, videos and reports, which we'd like you to see. One of the main problems areas for fly tipping is actually in front of these buildings. Residents have witnessed and been victims of threatening behaviour, self-harming, drug use, overdosing, acts of aggression and other antisocial behaviour, and at least 1 suicide from one of the HMOs. Unavoidably, such places act as a magnet drawing in other homeless people, including those with drug and alcohol misuse issues. We've had several illegal encampments where drug dealing has occurred in the rear accesses of our homes. Please adjourn, come and do a site visit, meet with us and see for yourselves. These incidents represent the hidden cost to the council and police and all other agencies from permitting the oversubscription of HMOs, cost to also residents reporting and coping with these issues on an almost daily basis, undermining the council's desire for maintaining healthy, sustainable and cohesive communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You can now return to the gallery. Okay, so now we'll open it up to the committee. Are there any comments on that? I think we've got a few here. Councillor Hutchinson, would you like to start?
Well, I mean, it works now. No. Oh. We're not doing very well. Oh, there we go. Fine. Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's the policy that was mentioned, the homes in multiple occupation policy from the emerging local plan, states that the change of use from another use to an HMO should not result in more than 10% of the residential properties within a 100-metre radius being used as an HMO. Now, we all know you need a planning licence if it's going to be for 6 residents or more. You need an actual housing licence if it's going to be for 5 residents or more, but you don't actually need a licence if it's going to be, say, for 3 or 4 people. So in the documentation I'm reading, therefore, on the basis of the available evidence, there is less than 10% of the houses used as an HMO. How do we know that they're not 3 or 4 people in lots of other houses nearby? So we're well over the 10%. So can I just query, what's the available evidence? As Councillor Casey Hume mentioned, have you looked at the electoral register? Although sometimes that won't tell you too much if there's a lot of transient people. But when it speaks about the available evidence, how sure are you on this less than 10% figure? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hutchinson. Would you like to respond?
We've been looking into this for quite some time, and we'll be looking into it further, exploring the issues of a potential Article 4 direction to remove permitted development rights. So we have been exploring all of the evidence that is available to the council. So we've looked at what properties we've got that are licensed for an HMO. We look at what properties have had planning permission for an HMO. We've looked at council tax records and the other evidence that we have. And all that we could say with any certainty is that we can only comment on those that are the larger ones. So the figures that we've given in the report are the evidence that we have. It may be that with time that we'll have more evidence available to us, but at the moment that's the evidence that we have within the council.
Okay, Councillor Fear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to first of all thank the local resident, the local councillor. It's a shame both local councillors weren't here to voice those concerns, but yeah, we are where we are. I deeply sympathise with this. First of all, in the emerging local plan, it doesn't talk about HMOs of 7 or above. It talks about HMOs. Full stop. So we need a better database. It's not good enough saying, oh, perhaps in the future evidence will emerge. We're being asked to take a decision this evening. We need the evidence to make that decision. So at the very least, what we have to do this evening is defer to make that possible. Otherwise, we're making a decision on incomplete evidence, and this is crazy. Beyond that, arguably, and I look to colleagues to see what they feel about this. I note the local councillor said, why not come to have a site visit? If you had a site visit, that would leave time for that evidence to emerge, and that too is important in that regard. There are other things, aren't there, that are worrying about this. I note the police report, and I think we should take that very seriously. I then wandered off and had a look on the internet. So I went to Up Your Street and various other things, and I noticed that this is a crime hotspot. I also noticed that more than 50% of that crime was crimes of violence, crimes to do with drugs, crimes to do with sexual violence. We really need to think very, very carefully about this. The police say, don't do this. There's the evidence, the crime figures. I actually noticed with concern that the ones about violence and sexual crimes were rising on the data that I saw. And then we can go to something which, brutally put, I mean, that's the most important thing, brutally put, is more trivial, but it's there anyway. I've known for a long, long time that Town Ward has a parking problem. And it's no good saying, oh, there was an office there before. That's daytime parking. HMOs is evening parking. That's a different issue. And that issue is outstanding here. Again, it's in the policies that we have in the emerging local plan. It just shows why having a local plan is such an important thing, that we've got an evidence base that's sitting there for us. But really and truly, at best, and as I say, I look to my colleagues' comments on this, the very least we should do here is defer this item. And I think, arguably, there is enough here to say refusal in the first instance.
Thank you, Chair. Just to a couple of points on that while a deferral may be what members would prefer, we've got to look at what that would achieve. If we're not going to be able to achieve, but if we're not able to get that evidence within that period of deferral, then we can't go around knocking on the doors and asking who lives there and how many people are living there. Because a small HMO doesn't require planning permission, so we don't have records of the but that we can't have calling out from there.
Yeah, sorry to the gallery, we can't have calling out during the committee meeting tonight.
We did respond to, I think that was the report that was referred to by the speaker, was about it was disappointing that officers had referred only a couple of days ago to supported living. Well, the reason that report was published a couple of days ago was because it was in response to a representation that was received only 2 or 3 days ago. And that was the representation that set out what residents believe to be within these properties, the number of HMOs. But the reference to supported living is in there because many of the properties that we referred to were set out as Lyme Trust properties. Now, Lyme Trust is a registered charity. Its primary function is care. It's not akin to a typical commercial HMO. They provide supported accommodation, and given that their primary function is care, we need to distinguish between those properties and a standard commercial HMO. So that's why that report is being produced and sets out as it does. So my concern about a deferral would be that if we're not going to be able to provide any additional information, then members potentially need to be making a decision now. I think, again, a site visit, whilst a site visit in many circumstances can be very helpful, it would normally be for members to view a site. So, for example, if there were design concerns, or you wanted to look at how it sits in its context, etc., that would be a sound reason to defer for a site visit, because you would be able to visit the site and see. I'm just concerned here that what would members be able to see in terms of the number of HMOs? They wouldn't be able to get that information from visiting the site. But by all means, if members want to visit the site, and because there is information that they feel they'll be able to get better from visiting the site, then that's something that we can accommodate.
Thank you, Officer. Councillor Tift, would you like to?
Thank you, Chair. With regards to the HOU7 policy, it says HMOs, it doesn't say registered HMOs. So how do we go about looking at that policy? Because for me, if there's more than 7, 8, 9 HMOs that are 4-bedroom, that's still going to create a huge amount of HMOs compared to that aren't registered. So is there a way of looking at that, or?
I absolutely hear what you're saying, and the policy is worded to just say to refer to the number of HMOs, but It's how we, if an HMO doesn't require planning permission, how are we able to establish that it is an HMO? So it's only the larger HMOs, there's more than 6 bedrooms that require planning permission, and therefore we have that evidence. So, but yeah, I hear what you're saying. There may be a number of smaller HMOs, but we're not able to provide that evidence.
Thank you, Rachel. Councillor Holland, do you have another question? Or did you want to come back on that, Councillor Tift?
Thank you. With regards to the car parking as well, so the HOU7 policy says that they need to provide car parking spaces. There isn't any. The bike store that we can see, I don't know how many bikes that's getting in there, but it's not many. The car park over the road, that's currently being sold by the council, I assume. So that's going to create extra car parking problems, because I assume that may be a building soon. It's not going to be a car park. The road, Wells Street, is currently a permit parking street. Who provides the permits? How do they get the permits? So if a HMO asks for 8 or 9 permits, do they just get them just by applying for them, or how does it work?
No, they don't. There's just bear with me while I find the email. I did look at this earlier today. Yeah, so in terms of parking permits, so Stoke City Council deal with the administration of parking permits, and so there is a residence parking zone, and each property in the street is only allocated a certain number of passes, so potentially not every HMO resident would be eligible anyway. If it was, so yeah, there would be no guarantee that those HMOs would have a space.
Sorry, Councillor Tift, on that. Would you like to respond, or are you good now? Okay. Councillor Holland?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the councillors who've spoken, certainly including Councillor Casey Hume. I'd like, so Councillor Fear's given us a decent run through, I think, of some of the major issues facing the application. But before we move on to some of those things, and I would say some things about parking and about amenity, can we touch the bottom of the saturation concern, because that might be a reason for us to be voting to defer this application tonight. And if we're deferring it, we don't then need to go on and have that conversation about all the other issues that have been brought to us. Councillors have been very clear. The wording of the emerging local plan policy is that this policy should apply to HMOs. I hear what our officer says, which is that there are permitted development rights, and it is possible for 3 small HMOs to emerge in a row, or for the 10% limit to be breached without any of that ever touching this authority, without us even seeing it. That doesn't change the fact that when we're being asked to approve a larger HMO, or to approve a change of use that would result in the creation of one, we are required to apply our policy. And I think my concern is that, yes, it's an emerging policy. We're not quite there yet, but if we do defer, there's every chance that council will adopt that policy in the meantime. But our council would not have sought to adopt a policy that was unenforceable. We simply wouldn't have done that, I don't think. I'm being charitable to our officers and to the many people who are involved, including Councillor Fear, in creating that emerging local plan. And the planning inspectorate would not have approved it if they thought that it was a nonsense policy that stood no chance of success when it came into contact with the real world. And at this stage, the planning inspector has approved that policy. They've said, you know what, the wording of that policy is quite good. That saturation limit, that's fine. The number in the frontages, if we're going to have 3 in a row, that's also fine. So we need to think, and our enforcement officers, our planning officers need to think about what is reasonable for us to do, firstly, when we're facing an application, and secondly, when we're doing our general enforcement activity, in order to collect proper data about which properties are being used as HMOs and which are not. And I hear absolutely all of the wording that's in the report and in the policy that's behind it about how this use class is not toxic. It is not certain that anything follows from a property being an HMO. There are lots of different HMOs and there are lots of different people who run HMOs. And quite recently at a committee, we had an application from Silverdale in which the applicant was at pains to tell us all about how, well, other HMOs are really poorly arranged and they result in an increase in antisocial behaviour and crime. But we're a top-notch company. We manage this thing. The tenants of this property will be absolutely A1 rated, perfect model citizens, and they will all ride their bikes or take the bus, so none of them will need a car. And I absolutely encourage more housing, because that's what we're looking at, isn't it? We're looking at a development or a change of use that is going to increase the amount of housing in our borough without building on green spaces, which is something that we all seek to avoid. But can our officer give us some clarity? Would it be possible, if we were to vote for deferral tonight, for us to come back at a future meeting with a proper legal answer and a proper answer to the question, how do we measure this data? Our officer says that you can't knock on their doors and ask who is living there. Well, perhaps you can, whether or not it's legitimate to use data. We've got a very highly developed data law in this country. I understand that we are not entitled to go with our clipboards from house to house, insisting that people tell us their status. That would be quite wrong. But there must be more than has already been done that can be done to establish whether or not this proposed development meets the very clear test set out in the emerging policy, which is firstly 10%, secondly 3 frontages in a row, all being HMOs. I think there must be something that we can do, and I would encourage our officer, if it's possible, to support us if we're able to. And in that case, I would be very happy to move that deferral for that reason, not because I want to go away and have a site visit, not because I want to go away and we'll spend more time thinking about the application, but solely so that our officers can come back to us and say, okay, here's what we can do, here's what we have done, and here is the answer to the question. Does it meet our emerging policy or does it not? Because that makes it very easy for us then to say, well, it's out of policy or it's inside policy. We move on.
No, I absolutely understand your questions. And I think, yeah, by all means, if members were to defer it, we would do our absolute best to see what evidence we can get, and we could seek a legal view on that. Obviously, I can't make any promises. We have tried prior to this application to get information. I did speak to my colleagues in the planning policy team, and their view is that, notwithstanding what you've said about the HOU 7 doesn't refer specifically to larger HMOs, their understanding is that that was the intention. But obviously, I don't.
And he wrote it. I think it was
well. So yeah, they wrote it. The planning policy team wrote it. Yeah, I understand that, but I spoke to the planning policy manager who wrote the plan and was interrogated at the examination, and that is his understanding. But absolutely, we can go back and see what information we can find. Although, I say that cautiously because I don't know what we'll be able to find.
Would you like to respond to that, Councillor Holland?
To say that our officer's given us as excellent advice as she always does. I will withdraw what I said off mic. It is certainly the case that our officers were driving the process and did an enormous amount of work on it, but there does seem to be a mismatch between the understanding of the construction of that particular policy between our senior officers and between the political leadership of the council at the time that policy was being drafted. I certainly would like for the interpretation that many members have adopted tonight to be the interpretation of policy, because it seems to me to be the sensible one. But if we're going to be told either tonight or at our next meeting that policy must be constructed as if it referred to licensed HMOs, that in my view will withdraw quite a large amount of protection from the general public when it comes to the creation of new HMOs. And it would not be a policy that I would particularly want to see left as relaxed as that in the future. And I think our problem tonight, chapesses, ladies, gentlemen, you must understand the government wants to take all of this away from us anyway. I believe this is an application as a change of use that will fall under the national the national delegation scheme for planning, which means that the government in the very near future, before the autumn, is going to take away Councillor Casey Hume's right to call it in. And our officers are going to have to make all of these decisions behind closed doors. And the only thing that we then have defending us is our policy, which we adopt and we want to see enforced. And I think it'd be a tremendous loss to the protections that the public have. It's nothing, absolutely nothing. I mean, our officers are giving us the best advice they can. And I completely appreciate all of the hard work that they've done. But I'd be disappointed if it turns out that we are compelled, either through legal advice or from the government above, to say that, no, you can only regulate the licensed ones, the unlicensed ones, they can run absolutely rampant and you can do nothing about it. Because even if you impose an Article 4 direction, it only creates more planning applications that our poor overloaded officers then have to determine. Sorry, that became a ramble.
Just very briefly to come back and say, yeah, I absolutely understand, as officers applying these policies to determine planning applications or to make recommendations on applications, we want them to be as clear and unambiguous as possible, because any ambiguities just make our life very difficult. So yeah, we will see what we can, what view we can get.
Thank you very much. Councillor Kasparowicz.
Yeah, thank you. Obviously, with everything that's been said regarding parking, etc., you know, I'm with that, and I just want to sympathise with the residents that everything they've gone through. There was a mention of professionals possibly using these HMOs. My concern is the size of the rooms, etc. Would professionals really be paying to stay in such a small room, etc.? I don't know. But more importantly for me, it's not really been mentioned as much, but the effect it has on the environments and surrounding areas with fly tipping, etc. What that can bring with it, with infestations, if there is drug use there. I think that's something else that would need to be really looked into, and the effect that that has on the environment around as well.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Are there any more? Would any other councillors like to add anything? Councillor Fear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to, and I look for a second, to formally propose deferral so that we have the appropriate information to resolve this issue. Given what's been said earlier in the meeting, I'd just like to say, I think those who know me know that I think very carefully about language. Professionally, it's one of the things I have to do. I reviewed the local plan very carefully as it went through, and I noticed that it said HMO with no qualifications. I therefore assumed that it meant HMO with no qualifications, because that's what it says. And part of the duty of this committee is to stop persuasive definitions of things which are not there. This says HMO. It doesn't say HMO of a certain size, it says HMO. That's the policy. That's what we should be looking at. We don't have the information to act on that. The local council has suggested ways whereby that information could be acquired. We need to have that. I am certainly not going to vote for something where I do not feel I have the appropriate information. So I feel I want to propose deferral so that that information can be brought to this committee so that we can make a decision with the appropriate information.
Thank you, Councillor Fear. I'd like to ask a question myself. I've left myself to last just to let everybody else have a go. Just looking at the housing policy, HOU7, obviously the more experienced councillors will know a bit more about this. But to my understanding, it does say no resulting continuous frontages of 3 or more HMOs in a row. Now, I understand that 25 and 27, it's been classed as 1 because it was changed to 1 for a commercial purpose. But to me, that is actually 3 frontages in a row. 25, 27 and 82. Would that be the correct way to view that?
No, I don't think it would. I think it would be that it's I mean, they're just numbers, aren't they? But in terms of planning units, which is how we would have to look at them, I think we would have to say that that would be a maximum of 2 HMOs.
Is that set out in the legal guidelines? Like, is that the definition of what it would be?
The issue of a planning unit and what constitutes a planning unit is a complex issue of law and interpretation as well. And I wouldn't want to give a definitive view now. And that's if members are happy, given that we're looking to defer it. If we deferred it, I could get a view on that as well. But my professional opinion is that that would not comprise 3 HMOs. It would be 2.
Thank you for that, officer. And just to reiterate, number 80 and 23 are not HMOs either. That we know of. Okay. Can I just add to the gallery at the back? I'm sorry that there is actually no calling out during this session. You do have to remain quiet, I'm afraid. Any other councillors would like to raise anything? Just to say, I think referral on that would be a motion I had before as well, on that basis as well. Yeah. But would anybody else like to add anything? No. So we have, Councillor Hutchinson, yeah?
Yeah, just quickly agree with everything that Councillor Fear said. Yeah, I mean, an HMO is an HMO. It doesn't matter if it's got more than 5 people, so it's got a licence. It doesn't matter if it's got more than 6 people, so it needed planning permission. If it's an HMO, it's an HMO. And I think deferral is exactly the right thing we should do tonight, so that we've got clear information that we can then look at and then scrutinise and vote on.
Thank you, Councillor Hutchinson. So there's no other motions then, other than deferral? And we are deferring on, sorry, can I just ask Councillor Fear to reiterate the reason for the referral?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First of all, so that we can have a clear view of how many HMOs of any size there are on this street. And I think also the question that you yourself raised about the definition of addresses and frontage is something else that I'm sure colleagues on the committee will be very, very interested in. So those 2 items, I think, and that I think will be sufficient, wouldn't it? That if we know how many HMOs there are, what we are pleased to define as a frontage, those are, I think, the key issues before this committee at the moment. Councillor Holland suggests to me that we have a definition of the emerging local plan policy HU7. To me, it's absolutely clear. As I say, I read this very closely as the portfolio holder at the time. I assume that when there is nothing said to qualify something, it is an unqualified assertion. That just seems to me a perfectly reasonable thing when we speak to each other. If I say I want a pint of beer, nobody sort of worries about whether I meant a half or a quarter or anything like that. I said a pint of beer, didn't I? So brutally put, I would be very, very surprised if there's an attempt to redefine that policy, and I would be very angry if that's the case. But if that's something that Councillor Holland feels is appropriate to put it down there for a deferral as well, I'm more than happy to include that.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Fear. So to summarise then, we have a motion from Councillor Fear, which I'm willing to second, and the motion will be for a deferral, based on what Councillor Fear has just said. Shall we put it to a vote? So all those in favour of the deferral? That is unanimous. So On to the next item on the agenda. Yes, the next item on the agenda is just to agree the site visit dates. We have to list up. Sure, somewhere, isn't it? Okay, so members can see the dates set out in front of them for site visits in the future. Is everybody happy with them, or would anybody like to add anything? No, all happy on them? Okay, so we'll need to put that to a vote. So everybody's in agreement, they're happy with them. Raise hands. That's unanimous again. And that's all the items. Sort of any other items for business? No? Well, thank you all for coming tonight. That's the end of the meeting. Thank you very much.